When Joe says some kid, CNN says, isn't this refreshing? Biden's like a mix of JFK and FDR with all the finer parts of Harry Truman. Christ, I know that they don't think that we're the brightest, but at least pretend we got a couple lumens. Ask yourself if you have ever questioned what they fed you, or do you just shut your eyes and then consume it? And now ask yourself if you ate every one of Biden's lies under guise of harm reduction and the promise of a slight improvement. And now imagine long ago that Biden chose to show you who he really was by traumatizing you for his amusement. Now imagine that you watched him touch a Bible with those filthy hands, and then assume the power of the highest seat in all the land, of knowing your attacker wields a global coalition born of three-letter agencies who'll make a life's mission out of trying to discredit you through lies, damn lies, and collusion. Big tech is never gonna separate from our surveillance state. Fuck's sakes, they're just a breath away from total fusion. So there will come a time where even if you see the light, your voice will never reach the sky through all the bots and all the noise pollution. So trust us when we tell you that the masking of abuses is perhaps this country's oldest institution. And I know nothing nobler than facing it in honor of the truth when you know that the people holding power have been neutralizing truth since there was wet ink on the Constitution. So know that Tara's truth is something crucial to the movement. And if you see yourself a partner to the revolution, help this country see through all the baseless propaganda through the crux of Joe's illusions. And recognize that Tara Reade gave everything she had so she could tell us what the truth is. Recognize the decent thing to do when someone bears their soul and shows their bruises is not to ask for context or offer up your own solutions. Your job is just to listen with an honest mind and put yourself on Tara's side a moment so you understand the path she chooses. That there is no instant fame worth the dragging of your name. And if that's what you think, you've a lot to learn about the kind of facts the mob can handle and the kind that it refuses. You've a lot to learn about the news and all its many uses. Guess you've yet to learn the truth the news will serve as fruit from which they've squeezed out all the juices. And we all eat the husk and just pretend it's full of nutrients and isn't really useless. But the jaws of our ability to yield accountability are absolutely toothless. So don't you kid yourself that any lips are being loosened. They won't ever tell us where the bodies are or show us where the proof is. It's on you to recognize the lechery our president so regularly oozes. It's on you to muster up some honesty and ask yourself how Biden won your trust, but it's America that loses. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises. Open up your eyes and learn to recognize the bruises.
They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. It's 'cause you are. They'll gladly stagnate a living wage, snap the
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to Politics of Survival. I'm your host, Tara Reade. Yeah, it's been a week since I've talked to you. And the last time I talked to you, it was with Kyle Seraphin, who is a FBI whistleblower. And tonight I have back with me to continue our conversation from last August, the wonderful Chairman Omali, who represents the Uhuru Group, the African People's Socialist Party, and who went through an FBI raid, as you all remember, my audience, back in August. And we had a show about that. And now he's back with us to talk about the latest developments and everything that's going on. So welcome, Chairman Omali. It's good to have you back.
Thank you so much. It's very good to be with you. We really appreciate the fact that you are assisting us in breaking out of this information blockade that has been imposed on us by apparently the federal government and various other platforms that serves the interests of the federal government. Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure. I think one of the things I want to talk about is I want to bring my audience up to speed, some new audience. We're on more platforms than last time you were with me, and have a little bit bigger audience. And so some may not know your whole story. So I'm going to ask you about that. But Reef, I don't know if you have that FBI footage handy, but if you do, let me know and we can put it up so people can see it of the raid.
I would have had it. Oh, you got it. Good.
Yeah, he's got it. He'll get it.
Splendid.
But in the meantime, it's on their page, by the way. It's on the spear, the burning spear.
Right.
If you find it, if you look it up. So for my audience, the Uhuru Group has if you look it up, it's called the Burning Spear. So you can look that up. They have a really good publications and YouTube clips of a lot of things they've been through, and Reef is showing us. So thank you, Reef. So Chairman Omali, could you talk a little bit about your group and the Uhuru Group, what you do, what happened in August, and then bring us up to speed?
Well, the Uhuru Movement stems from struggle of Black people in this country in the 1960s. I said in this country, but at that time, the Black movement was really growing like as an international movement, connected all around the world with different kinds of organizations, et cetera, but all really concentrating on the question of anti-colonialism, the struggle against colonialism, which is something that permeated the entire world. Oppressed peoples everywhere were struggling. I mean, we came out of a Bandung conference in the 1950s where countries from Africa and Asia came together to talk about freedom and independence. In 1966, the Tricontinental Conference happened in Havana, Cuba, attended by something like more than 300 people from something like 80 different countries and what have you. So at this time, the struggle was one that was seriously involved in just trying to become a liberated and free people. So the Uhuru Movement was born from that process. I was an organizer with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee called SNCC. It was an extraordinarily dynamic kind of movement, and it was the organization that really represented the bridge from the civil rights movement that people like to, in retrospect, applaud Martin Luther King for being a part of, and a new rising movement that was characterized as a Black Power movement. And this Black Power demand that came about in 1966 from SNCC, by the way, was a demand that gave a relatively universal character to the struggle of Black people in this country and connected to the whole struggle of anti-colonialism. So the struggle for power is a struggle against colonialism as opposed to a simplistic struggle against racism, saying that what we have to do is fight to make white people like us. And there's no way you can even know if you ever won the struggle against racism. It's not like somebody comes out with a flag and say, okay, we surrender, now racism is dead. But the end of colonialism results in people who can be free. There can be, we saw that in Cuba and Algeria and various other places where people were winning freedom. So we were part of that movement. And in 1966, as a member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, on the December 29th of that year, I was arrested in St. Petersburg, Florida, for leading a demonstration to the City Hall And at which time, several of us went into that building of the City Hall and removed an 8x10 grotesque racial caricature of Black people hanging in the real seat of power. And I was charged with 11 different offenses, sent to court on misdemeanor charges, convicted, sent to court on the felony of grand larceny for removing that, and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. I spent off and on something like 2 years in prison based on that. And our movement sort of grew out of that along with other forces, but at the same time, we were coming into existence. We are looking at the process that this country was the United States, and the whole world was in a certain state of turmoil, and just similar to now, where you see how the contradictions are occurring with one sector of the population climbing the walls of the Capitol and chasing the vice president, et cetera. It was just turmoil everywhere. And inside the United States is turmoil. People forget that it was in November of 1963 that U.S. president was killed, assassinated here. We saw a period where one president was forced to resign, another, and which was a coup of sorts. Another president, vice president, was forced to resign during the same time frame. 1965, Malcolm X was assassinated, and there's no doubt in anybody's mind of the involvement of the U.S. government in that, and the FBI. 1968, Martin Luther King was assassinated. 1969, Fred Hampton of the Black Panther Party in Chicago, Illinois, December 4th, assassinated. There was just this array of killings and this contest at the time that was occurring between what was characterized as Soviet Russia and the United States was a factor, just as the contest between Russia, China, the United States, and these other forces in the international arena constitute a part of the context that we're looking at, where the United States is now again fighting for its hegemonic place in the whole world in this contest. And at the same time, we have Joe Biden claiming that he represents the leadership of the in the struggle of the democracies against the autocracies of the world. And it's just an extraordinary thing that is there. And our organization has been one for self-determination. And we have various kinds of institutions we've created, a lot of them here in St. Louis, where we've been since 2014, after the murder of Mike Brown by police forces, and also a host of FBI agents coming into St. Louis, by the way. And we were told that it was supposed to be we assumed it was supposed to be many people to look out for the interests of the Black people who've been killed by the police, police who were wearing bracelets proclaiming their fidelity and loyalty to Darren Wilson, the person who killed Mike Brown, in a city that had a majority African population, but only a couple of Africans on the police department or in the government, et cetera. But that's not the case. The FBI came in and set up 3 young people and arrested them for plotting to commit some kind of offense in the city. So we've been here for a long time. We organize. We now exist on the continent of Africa. We're in Europe. We're in France and England in particular. But we have forces who we work with for long times in Berlin, in Germany, and various other places, Belgium, in Europe. We are in the Americas.
You were in Ireland too.
Oh yes, I was in Ireland. That was one of the most extraordinary trips I made. And this is, what makes it so obviously phony, this charge about we're supposed to be Russian agents, in part because I went to Moscow at the invitation of a non-governmental organization there in Russia. But I was in Ireland. And it was an extraordinary experience because it was the first time I'd ever seen that white people who were living under the circumstances in there, just like black people here. I mean, where they were living under direct British colonialism, and the terror that the people were facing was horrific. But the Irish united with us, and we won them to come out with a press conference stating their unity with our demand for reparations, and also their unity with our demand that the United States should ratify the United Nations Convention on prevention and punishment of the crime of genocide. So I was invited to Spain. I was in Spain at a non-governmental organization that was close to the Spanish government there. So I've done all those things. And we built an organization, a small organization, but we're relatively influential, and we have a presence in many places, around the world.
I wanted also to bring it home to St. Louis, because one of the things that I loved about, the things that all the people in your movement are doing together is lifting up other people that are struggling and trying to get small businesses, trying to, you have a farmer's market, you're giving back into your communities there.
And that's what it's all about. And I think that's one of the major problems that we're confronted with, because at the same time, you have groups of people who, and some of these are people in government and who claim that they detest the idea that black people are on welfare and sucking and from resources. But the fact is, there's a determination has been made a long time ago that black people should be maintaining a state of dependency. And our objective is to end that dependency and to create a capacity for our people, our community, to feed, clothe, and house itself. And so we built these institutions. Right now, we're in the process of building a women's health center. We have training doulas, which is extraordinarily important in St. Louis, where you have a situation where enough black babies die in the first year of life to fill 14 kindergarten classes. That's every year. And where they've destroyed African communities, we are rebuilding communities. We're building basketball courts, not the local government here, but we are doing that. And that's the thing that's a real problem, because everything that we have to do, creating health centers for women, creating the market that just mentioned. They love to talk about the St. Louis and the black community being some kind of food desert. Well, we say it's a power desert. That's the real problem. If you have power, we can feed, clothe, house ourselves. And we've been dealing with creating farmers markets, and that also creates jobs, and that allows money to circulate inside the community, and which offers all kinds of opportunities for people that otherwise they wouldn't have. And
artisan community as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that that's part of what it is that we have been about and what we do. And so this insulting, this racist attack by the liberal anti-racist Biden government and the liberal anti-racist Democratic Party. I mean, it's the most offensive kind of trope that you can imagine, that somehow black people are not smart enough to know that we are oppressed. And we're not smart enough to know that 1 out of every 8 human beings on the planet Earth who's in prison is a black person in this country. We're not smart enough to know that we need to be able to feed, clothe, and house ourselves. We need to end the repression. We need to fight back against the kinds of George Floyds and these other things that are happening. We're not smart enough to say, hey, let's force the United States to show its real hand. Let's go before the United Nations, a legal, nonviolent act. Let's take petitions, go before the United Nations, and charging the United States with violating this United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Crime of Genocide. What's illegal about that? We say we run candidates. They charge us with running candidates in 2017 and 2019 for city election. We did. And our campaigns put reparations for the first time in the history of this country were put on the ballot. We didn't take guns and say we're going to take reparations. We put it on the ballot so people could vote on it and vote for this. And they said that's how they prefer us to participate in the electoral process in this country. Yet, when we do that, when they say they don't like what's happening with George Floyd and they don't like police killing us, so we say, let's put on the ballot Black community control of the police. These are things that challenges this whole notion that somehow Black people are simply to be inert recipients of welfare of some sort, but never in control of our own lives, never being able to create for ourselves. And this is one of the reasons that they had to attack us. And it's illegitimate. This whole notion that Black people are so inept, so stupid, so backwards, that we can't see our own oppression, that the Russians have to tell us to do this. It's just some of the most vicious racial trope that you can have coming from the liberal, if you will, Biden administration and the liberal Democratic Party as they put themselves forward. These are the anti-racists who are doing this. If the anti-racists are doing this, what the hell can we expect from Klans persons who identify themselves right up front? This is who we are. But the anti-racists are the ones who are doing this, and that's something that everybody should be conscious of. There's a lot of talk now about the weaponization of the FBI and intelligence organizations, and I'm happy that some people have begun to see that, because if they had seen it earlier, they would have recognized that it's there. They would have seen Malcolm X's death and Martin Luther King's death and Fred Hampton's death. I mean, all of these are instances where it was clear the FBI was involved. Even W.E.B. Du Bois in 1951 was actually put on trial for the very same thing that they're charging us with. And the point is that what we have been doing, not with this in something that we were looking forward to, is we continue to prove the fact that freedom is illegal for Black people in this country. And people sometimes forget that Black people did not come here looking for a better way of life. We came here as captives at gunpoint and what have you, and our way of life, better way of life, was taken away from us. And we've been trying to change that relationship, change our circumstances, breaking out, escaping from slavery. Once it was over, fighting thousands of us in the Union Army and what have you, ending the Civil War, and everything we've been doing. Martin Luther King, people like to talk about him now. I say people, I'm talking about hypocrites. I'm talking about the Bidens. I'm talking about the Democratic Party. I'm talking about all those liberals who say they love Martin Luther King. They have created this false narrative that has liquidated that King was fighting for against oppression. And he wasn't just somebody who was running around saying, be peaceful and love everybody, let's get on. He was fighting against oppression. He just said that the United States was the how did he characterize it? The greatest purveyor of violence on earth. And he talked about reparations. He talked about some of the same, and they killed King because of his effectiveness in delivering the message for Black freedom. So King, they like to say, well, Malcolm X, they killed Malcolm. So Malcolm X said he was for violence, and King was for nonviolence. But the fact is that what characterized both these persons are not for or against violence, but for freedom. And they died because of that. And they died in some instances, it was like liberal Democratic Party organizations that were responsible for it. And so I'm just saying that that we've come under attack. And right now, there are at least 4 of us who are characterized as unindicted co-conspirators because we work for Russia. And, I'm 81 years old. I can't know a day in my life that I can say that Black people did not suffer humiliation, brutality, starvation, poverty, joblessness, poor health, and the whole bit. Not a single day in my life. And then for the federal government to say that the Russians had to tell me that was happening to me, that's the most racist kind of trope that one can imagine, and that's based in part. It's not it's not the law that they are relying on so much as it's a political attack on us, and it's based on some assumption that there are enough white people in particular who can believe this racist trope that's coming from Biden and the Democratic Party and the FBI, that they can get away with this public lynching that they're involved in attempting to carry out right now.
You know, and let's go right to that. Hey, Reade, do you have the FBI footage, the raid footage? It's on the burning spear. Okay.
That's the only thing you see, huh? Well, I think it's important because what happened is, you know, yeah, they attacked.
You can look up videos. It should be there. It should be under one of the channels there, or just look it up on YouTube. Look up, just put in the FBI raid. Whatever.
Right, okay. Right.
Cool. And then get back to us. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so he's going to do that. But so for the audience, I want to bring up that video for you all. But what happened is at the end of July, and what I want you to take me through real quickly while we're waiting for him to find that is what triggered. All of a sudden, you're going along, you're having your farmers markets, you're having your doula. I mean, it was the same week, by the way, that Trump got raided in Mar-a-Lago, and you know, so they're doing these FBI raids, and they've been doing them to the January 6th protesters as well, and they've been doing them to others. So there seemed to be like they seemed to have a busy summer. But what triggered it? And yours was in particular very violent, by the way. And I want the audience to know how violent it was, because it was much different than the other ones that you saw, which were basically going into empty houses for those people. Like in Trump's case, they weren't even home and they went through and rummaged through, but it was nothing like yours. So could you take the audience through that and what you think triggered that visit?
Well, I think there are a lot of factors that's involved, but I think something right now that was important for how Biden moved and the federal government is that Biden's polls have been in the dumps. I mean, they've been in the cellar for a long period of time. And you got to remember, they were facing midterms elections where they expected that the Democratic Party was going to come out extraordinarily bad. So I think that Biden needs to be tough. And so he's attacking all these forces, you know, et cetera, and shutting. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
go ahead. Yeah, let's go ahead and bring it up.
Please,
okay.
Let's do that.
What happens? Okay, audience, here you go. Thank you, Reade. Okay.
That's the front of my house there.
There you go.
In St. Louis. That's my house in St. Louis.
There you are. You have look how many armed. Okay, now here we go. Can you play that, Reade? Let that play. That's okay. Oh, okay. Okay, well, keep going. I don't think you will, because this was played before.
Yeah.
So it's played on news, so don't worry about it.
The only revolutionary organization that's done something here on the ground practically for African people is the one that's come under attack. Institution that offers a community radio station, a newspaper, a commercial kitchen, an Aquaba Hall rental space, and community office for our organizers. That was the building that has come under attack.
What is that? Those are flash grenades?
Yeah, those are grenades. Yeah.
Yeah, breach, what do you need? They want, I don't know. Oh, it's all better than money. Oh, thank you.
All right, Reade, go ahead and stop it there, and then let's put the link down below. So audience members, if you want to watch that, go ahead and go to the Burning Spear, but also right now there's a link to that video from their site, so you can click on it if you want to watch the whole thing. But Chairman Omali, could you describe like what people were seeing right there? There was flash grenades, right?
Yeah, it was extraordinary. My wife and I in St. Louis were happened to be up that morning because she was preparing to go and work with the training of the doulas later that morning, and I was actually preparing to go to the gym. We were sitting around talking about how we'd be moving that morning, and then out of the black, there came this racket from a loudspeaker that first we couldn't understand what was being said, but they were saying that the residents in this house should come out with our hands up and our hands empty, that this is the FBI. And as they began saying that, then these flashbang grenades, these sounds started going off all around the house, and they had actually entered into the rear stairwell of our house and had detonated those grenades there that, you know, tore plaster and stuff. They knocked in windows, and when I went downstairs, I got to the bottom of the stairwell, and in the dark, now lighted by their presence, there were these military forces. And they were armed with assault weapons. They were standing there with an armored vehicle. And when I got to the bottom of the stair, they used those assault weapons and the laser targeting devices. They were in my chest. They were bouncing off my chest, and it was a threat to kill me. I mean, you don't do that, you know, for any other reason. And so I got downstairs. My wife had tried to call people to let them know we were under attack, but they had jammed our phones. The phone company was working with them. They jammed our phones. The St. Louis Police Department was there with them. And I get downstairs. I'm asking, what is this? What is going on? They tell me that there's an indictment that's happening for a Russian national in Russia, and that later that day he's going to be indicted. And if he ever comes to the United States, they're going to do something to him, put him in jail or something to that effect. And then that they said my name was involved in it. And so they have a search warrant, they said. And I mean, they say they're doing this to do a search warrant. Like the doorbell didn't work, like knocking on the door didn't work. I mean, even if there was a reason for a search warrant, and there was none, that was just ridiculous. And so they zip tied me behind my back, which gave them a real problem because they had a problem trying to undo it a little later on. And they handcuffed my wife behind her back. What does that got to do with a search warrant? And so, you know, we're standing there. Flashbang grenades are still going off all over the place, terrorizing the entire community, and trying to humiliate us. They wanted us to sit on the curb, you know, while they carried out this ridiculous and dangerous, very dangerous kind of raid against us. My wife, when she was coming out of the door behind me, I was almost hit in the face by a drone. They had sent a drone up into the apartment. I live in a very small place. I mean, and so that happened there. Then across town, you saw some footage of the Solidarity Center, where we do work in the white community, and there are these white forces, the African People's Solidarity Committee, have a center there, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and they work every day in the white community, uniting as many white people as can be won to unity with the objectives of freedom for Black people. That's all they do, not violently or anything like that. And there's a tremendous base of support that's been won there. And so they use battering rams, the real mechanized battering rams to knock down steel doors. And every place they went, including my house, they occupied my house for hours. And they looted things like recording devices, laptops, iPads, cell phones from my house. They did the same thing at the Solidarity Center, which is in the white community. And then they went to the homes of 2 people there, and 4 people altogether, and held them at gunpoint. In St. Petersburg, Florida, that was some of the footage when you saw all of those agents walking across. That was in St. Petersburg, Florida, at the Uhuru House. That was July 29th. It's not a coincidence that July 2nd, 27 days earlier, somebody had pulled into the parking lot in broad daylight, took out a military-grade flamethrower from the trunk of the car, and torched our flag, red, black, and green flag, on a 50-foot flagpole of a 15 by 25-foot flag. They torched it. And then the police did not want to cooperate. They ended up having the home, the home, whatever this home thing is called, and FBI and police department, they all come out. But they won't charge this guy with anything except criminal mischief. They won't charge him even with arson, despite the fact that he's torched the flag and what have you. And so that's 27 days before. And then on the 29th, they attacked that building. They put our radio station temporarily off the air. They raided our archives. That's 40, 50 years of archives there. I don't know how much they took from that. They stole our devices, recording devices, notes, yellow pads where things have been written and what have you. They did that, and then they went to my home in St. Petersburg, Florida. This was the second largest group of agents you saw moving out of this place. And then they went to the home of one of our young leaders there and told her, they used the local police department, told her that her car was being broken into, come out and investigate. And when she came out of the house, the FBI came from everywhere. They took her phone from her. It was just a whole terroristic act that they initiated against us. And like I said, they stole all kinds of devices that they'll use to construct whatever kind of story they want to construct. And, things, even discussions and stuff, texts between me and my wife would be involved in the stuff that they took from us, and all kinds of material. So that's what happened then. And I should tell you that as recently as last Saturday, because we have these programs going, economic development, that's been referenced already, where we're uplifting the community right across the street from my house, right across the street from my house. We had under contract a church that had been abandoned for a long time, where we were going to put some programs there, community programs, and move our headquarters in St. Louis there. First, what happened was that the seller all of a sudden had trouble and raised the prices for the cost, $50,000 more to get the church. And then right after that, they burned the church to the ground. The church became an inferno. They torched it. They torched the church. And before this, the same month, that was in October when we started the process. Last Saturday is when they burned it. The same October, a young man who is a part of our movement, who actually accompanied me to Russia, who was working as a substitute teacher in St. Louis, who was supposedly being hired full-time there, suddenly was told that he was not going to be hired. They were not going to hire him. He gets in a heated discussion with them. On October 31st, after we've done this Halloween program for the children in the community, he's there taking down the Halloween decorations, and 2 cops come, handcuffed him, put him on the ground in tightened handcuffs. And then they said they're arresting him for making terroristic threats. The terroristic threats are supposed to be related to the discussion he had with the people about his job. But they take him to jail. They hold him for 2 weeks, but for 5-6 hours, he's sitting there in a holding cell watching everybody else being processed, but not him. And then finally what they do is that they come in, 2 agents come in and tell him that all of that, the charge about terroristic attacks, all that's BS. They're chums now. They're being buddied. That's just BS, man. What we want to know about is Russia. Can you identify any of these people in the picture in Russia? How many members of the African People's Socialist Party are there? What did the people think? After we raided you, how did the people respond to that? What did the people think about that? So that's the kind of stuff that they've done. And yes,
it's interesting. It's interesting you're bringing this up because, as you know, I came forward about my terrible experience working for Joe Biden in 2019 and 2020.
We forgive you for that, that employment. Everybody's got to have a job somewhere, I guess.
Yeah. And when I came forward about, what he did to me about the sexual assault.
Yes.
And I had reported it at the time in 1993, went through the Senate, but I didn't go public. And then in 2019, I went public and I had cooperating evidence and all of that stuff. Of course, he's never been investigated.
Right.
I had that political machine coming after me, right? So immediately I was called a Russian asset, even though, that's, I lived, my mother was an artist, and an anti-war movement. She's part of the Committee Against Racism, actually, in Chicago and Madison, Wisconsin, as a matter of fact, as a kid, and Progressive Labor Party in Wisconsin. So I lived part of the time on a farm in Wisconsin and was born in Monterey, California. So no, I didn't have any ties to Russia, right? But they continued that narrative. And then it just recently came out. Well, I saw it, but I didn't know what to do with it. But I had I was contacted by Twitter's attorney that my communication had been taken under sealed warrants in 2020. And there was a grand jury impaneled. And they wanted to know things about Russia, right? And it's like, I have nothing to say. So anyway, that's still, so the grand jury still, I don't know if that case had anything to do with Russia. I don't know if it had anything to do with me particularly, except that they were asking, there was a summons for Twitter to hand over all my communications. And the Twitter attorney said, this means everything, probably Google, Apple. I mean, it means your Gmail, it means phone number, it means everything, right? But it's under sealed warrant, so you won't see it. They had to make a motion in court and spend thousands of dollars to even tell me there was a sealed warrant. I got a hold of the sealed warrant, so now I know what it is. But recently, as last week, I was asked about a Russian national doing a influence campaign in the United States, and that perhaps I had just fallen in with the wrong crowd, a bad crowd. And I said, no, I've been a political activist. My mother was one. I think for myself. Like again, it's that same tactic. So I think that there's something going on right now where there's a desperation in the Biden administration because they have a proxy war against Russia using Ukrainians as a meat grinder, and people are dying for the military industrial complex, basically. And they're going after any movement that's anti-war. And I think your movement is, of course, you've always been anti-war and anti-imperialist. So just like some other ones. And I think that this is, but what the point of all of this is that this is the weaponization of the intelligence services for a political party.
Sure.
Seeing it with the Twitter files.
Sure.
So I wanted to ask you, because now our audience kind of sees the convergence.
Right.
You see of a lot of people all of a sudden being caught up in this wide net while they're looking for Russians under everyone's bed, right? And and I don't like xenophobia. I don't like the bigotry that's against Russia. I don't like the fact that Russian athletes were prohibited from participating in Wimbledon, that a Russian composer in New York was fired because he was Russian. It's ridiculous. It is
ridiculous.
It's disgusting. They have 1,000 years of history, of cultural contributions. And it's ridiculous that this particular bigoted, ugly administration, and by the way, Biden is racist as hell. I worked for him. I know what he is. I've heard him.
Yeah.
And the illusion and this persona he gives off is a fiction.
Yeah.
And
we remember what he said about Obama. If you remember when Obama with about and but I think that this whole Russia thing, the fact of the matter is that our position was supporting Russia. Be quite clear, that was our position. Just like we supported the Vietnamese in Vietnam against, and we supported Cuba, and we supported Algerian Revolution. But the thing about Russia that goes back much further than, what is widely recognized in terms of 2014, when the U.S. Factored into overthrowing the legitimate government and chasing them out of the country and putting their own people in power, including, Nazis and things like that. But the fact is that Russia has been under attack now for more than 100 years by the United States. I mean, if you remember that, not remember because you wouldn't have been old enough, neither would I, but after the Russian Revolution in 2017, Russia was invaded by all of the colonial powers, including the United States and Japan. They occupied parts of Russia, and this time Soviet Russia, as it was characterized, and forever they isolated Russia in terms of economic relationships with other countries and things like that. Quarantine and economic quarantine of Russia to starve it out. And then when you look at, NATO, NATO was created for the purpose of destroying Russia. There was no secret about that. That's what NATO was about. And the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and this whole Atlanticist kind of movement that has led much of the colonial world since the 40s. Which is now something that's being under assault by different factors. And even this whole Russia thing, I think, relates to, in part, the Trump administration or people who were close to Trump or associated with Trump. I think many of them were trying to be involved economically with Russia in terms of, the petroleum and Russia is rich in and those kinds of resources. And I think that was problematic for a lot of them because much of their politics has been for the last more than 100 years to isolate Russia. Russia is problematic for other reasons. I mean, because of free Russia, a Russia capable of engaging in free economic and political relationships is a problem in Europe. Because as Russia goes, you're going to see a whole reconfiguration of the whole, European power structure. I mean, Germany, France, and what have you would be inclined naturally, normally, to be moving toward Russia's orbit. And I think that's a part of the problem that we're looking at. So, and the thing is that it's dangerous. It's extraordinarily dangerous. The war, the work, these games they're playing. That with nuclear power countries like Russia, China, that they're threatening in a very serious way, it's very dangerous. And the lives of people, I mean, they just brought people from Ukraine to train them in this country. I mean, increasingly it's becoming clear that this is America's war. But
they're circumventing the conversation, right? Where you would have a debate in Congress and you'd have like citizens being able to give their opinions. And what are they doing? They're doing it kind of sneakily and they're just like proxy warring it in by doing what they're doing. Meanwhile, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, some of the biggest weapons manufacturers have made close to $1 trillion in profits since last year. So they have no incentive for diplomacy, right?
No,
they're just lining their pockets, and so I want to get to this point, Chairman Omali. Where are you now with your case, and what does it mean for you and your movement, and how can people help?
Thank you. Well, first of all, people can help by going to Hands Off Uhuru. That's UHURU, handsoffuhuru.org. And we need the help. We want people, and there are thousands of people who've demonstrated or expressed support and solidarity with us against this attack by the FBI. And I think this is something that the Biden administration, the Democratic Party, the FBI itself, I really think that they misread and misread this moment in history. And this is different from the 1960s when we didn't know what was happening to us with a COINTELPRO. They they'd used bombs and stuff in our community, woke up the whole community. And then they told us, the agents told us that this is going to be in the news. This is going to make big news. So they knew what it was they're doing. And so that gives you, like your viewers an opportunity to now take a stance around this question. But what we're looking at is that we've been hearing that indictments are pending, that any day now we could be indicted. and at least 4 of us. But the thing is that they have made our entire movement and organizations, all of its component parts, a part of this unindicted co-conspiracy thing.
Can I ask you, under what act are they trying to indict you? Is it
they're doing foreign? They're using the Foreign Agent Registration Act. That somehow we did not register.
Yeah, for the audience who doesn't know, look it up. It's a website. Don't be scared. I'm sure they won't trace you. But it's a Foreign Registration Act. But this is what I was told by, I had the FBI whistleblower that was on, is that they don't even prosecute that. They teach them that in academy. The FARA Act is never prosecuted.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, there's movements towards indicting people on this act. What do you think that's about? And what information are you getting about? Because how could you're an American citizen, you're not acting for a foreign government. What is this reach that they're trying to do? What is it they're trying to do?
I think part of what it is they want to do is take us off the streets and take us out of these communities and take away whatever influence that we have. They want our organizers. They want the people who are building these basketball courts and building these workforce programs. They want to destroy that. They want to, and then they want to take all the resources that we have going toward these. And people have made, the basketball court cost something like $150,000 that a lot of people, including white people, donated to as a form of certain kind of reparation. I think they want to stop that. And because every success that we have is testimony to the failure of the United States government in terms of responding to the needs of African people. And they want us to be shut up, like they shut up King, like they shut up Malcolm, and et cetera. So I think that and taking these monies, it's going to take, right now, we're looking at a possibility of a minimum of $500,000 just for lawyer fees. It took $40,000 to repair the damage that they had done when they knocked in doors and things like that, and to purchase new phones and iPads and things like that. So I think that that they want to make sure that none of our resources can go to carrying out our work. Like the church we were talking about building, they got rid of that. I think the other things that they can make us, they can, divert resources that we're putting into the community and make it something that we have to spend getting people out of jail, paying lawyers and things like that. I think that, and that's why the support of the people is really critical. They you talk about how they was it Twitter? You said, where did they take your
they've taken all my communications.
What they did to us, we had 130,000 signatures on change.org, where people united with the call that we should go to the United Nations, taking the United States before the treatment of African people. They took 130,000 signatures, away from us. And this is all nonviolent activity. This is all legal activity. This is stuff that's supposed to represent a democratic participation of the people. That they did all of that. So now, we've got lawyers right now for most of us. And again, the question of raising resources is critical. I want to get those. I want to get those petitions back up. I want people to sign those petitions and spread them out on the Genocide Convention. I want people, if you can, volunteer. We need lawyers, people and legal workers. We need researchers and things like that, because our objective is not simply to roll over, but to put them on trial and make them have to explain the activities of the FBI. How did Martin Luther King did not die in his sleep? Malcolm X didn't die naturally, and all of them didn't just die all in the same time frame, same span of time, like coincidentally. How did this happen? These are things that we want them to have to explain. They say that I'm working for a Russian. How the hell did I just start working for the Russians? I've been doing what I do now for more than 50 years. So why were you, if I'm working for the Russians now, why was the FBI following me and harassing me in the 1960s? Right. So they need to be able to explain all of that, that harassment. And like I'm saying, the weaponization of the feds, of these institutions did not just begin. J. Edgar Hoover declared that the Black Panther Party was the greatest internal threat to the security of this country. Not the Russians, but Black people. And so this is what it is that we're looking at. We're hoping that people can unite with us in this campaign and help us also. We've got to break out of this silo that they would impose on us, Zuckerberg and the rest of them who nothing but instruments, mouthpieces for the government itself. We have to break out of that silo, and I'm hoping that people who with you can help to share, put this thing out, and help everybody to know what the hell happened, so that we're not just victimized by the news cycle, you know, with the general legitimate, in quotes, media, right? We have to break out of that.
Right. Independent media is important. And I'm glad you mentioned that. And I'm part of Independent News Network and Indy. I appreciate him. And Reef is that. All of the people that help me are volunteering. And we try to raise up stories like yours and your movements because it's important and it's crucial that we unite at this time. And so, you know, the people that I have a very diverse audience, apparently politically. Like there's libertarians, there's Republicans, there's people from international countries that watch this show and support me. And there's socialists and there's communists. I mean, I have people from all different, you know, political backgrounds. So they are not going to be, and they're all being targeted, by the way. January 6th, they're considered far right, or they're considered, I forget what the MAGA, they're considered MAGA, they're considered extreme. They're being called domestic terrorists. Court. And, you know, and some of these people that are, you know, 70 years old, 60 years old, they had their own grief and their own upsetness that they were there at January 6th, but they didn't do anything. They were, many of them, most of them didn't, just milled around. It's amazing. And, you know, there was some destruction of property or whatever, and that was dealt with. But the sentences, you know, I had when I, you know, because I mentioned the Kim Iverson show, and she was good enough to have you on,
right?
And she's been raising awareness. She's an independent show that everyone should support 5 days a week, you know, for an hour. 3 p.m.
Our presence there generated a lot of attention. A lot of people saw us as a consequence of that. Yeah.
Good. And I'm really wanting people to pay attention to independent, you know, Glenn Greenwald, some others that are the Revolutionary Black Network, Savvy Sabs. You know, you've got a lot of different networks trying to be heard. So check out Rumble and you can check them out. But what I wanted to say too is, with regards to the indictment, it must be so hard emotionally for you and your family and the people in your movement to just kind of have that anxiety every day. How are you all dealing with that? And what are you doing to help each other with that, like getting through? And what, you know, where are you with your lawyers and what they're saying? I mean, do you have time? Is this imminent, or is this, you know, what's going on? What will happen? In other words, are they going to just take you into custody, or is it like a process?
Well, you know, I'm surprised that we haven't been indicted yet. Because at one point we were led to believe that it would have happened early this month. And but we understand that it will happen, you know, it is relatively imminent. I mean, within the immediate time frame. That's what we understand. And we have, I think, good lawyers who are working with us. Again, that's going to cost a lot of money because of all, you know, you're going up against the federal government, you know, with all the resources they have, and they've got tons and tons and tons and tons of materials that they took from us. And we don't have even the ability to go through our own stuff. You know, can you remember what you have, you know, posted and texted, you know, 3 years ago, or what have you? So I mean, so you know, that's stuff we have to deal with. And yeah, I think that you know, the objective in part is to paralyze us, you know, with fear and anxiety and things like that. And what we've concluded is that we must be doing something right if they're attacking us. And so we just keep on doing as much right as we can. Work. And, you know, try to meet, you know, more people like you and, you know, other forces who trying to make sense of this thing or trying to help everybody else make sense of this thing. We are having rallies and meetings. We did a press conference today at the church that they torched, which is right across the street from my house, as I mentioned. And so we are just being busy touring where we can to tell people the story, because what they require is this stuff to be kept in the dark. They like to function like roaches, you know, who can't tolerate the light. And what we have to do is shine the light on it, make it clear what's going on. And that's what we work. And so every day, you know, we are pursuing the programs that we have established, you know, in various places, and even trying to do new programs. If their objective is to keep us from bringing these programs to the community, open up new programs. We have created, we function in the solidarity movement. These are white people who you know, who believe that in free speech and freedom of assembly, and that also that the treatment of African people in this country needs to stop. And so we function, and we have members of that organization, one of those organizations in 141 cities in this country. We exist in South Africa. We exist in various places in the Caribbean. Like I said, we're a small organization, but we are there in these places, and we are taking this message out because, you know, on December 15th, Joe Biden had these 49 heads of state from Africa in this country, and part of he's pandering to them because he's not having to compete with China and Russia for influence in Africa, something they haven't had to do for a very long time. They just dominated everything, and he made this really interesting statement where he talked about how in talking to the Africans that have to apologize for the treatment of Black people. And he called this America's original sin, what they've done to African people. And so I know the one Pope just died, but I got no information that suggests that this original sin, there's ever been any absolution for that. There's ever been, it's over now. And that original sin is something that has resulted in the death of George Floyd and their political prisoners in this country, Black political prisoners, some who've been locked up for generations and what have you. Part of the original sin, people just want to be free. That's the objective. People want to be free. And we've used the democratic process that's supposed to be available to us. We participated in elections. We've exercised free speech. We've done all those things that's supposed to be legal, except when we participated in elections and we spoke freely. What we learned is that you can participate and speak only if you participate the way you want it. They want you to participate and say what it is they want you to say. Otherwise, you pay a price for it. And as long as this entity continues to exist and suck the blood of peoples everywhere around the world and inside this country as well. So it's a serious struggle, and it is one that, you see, we have little children and everything in our movement, and people who just want to be happy. They didn't accuse us of bank robbery, of looting anything. They're the looters. They came and they even attacked our right to free speech. Who gets them to pay a price for that? You know, I mean, and so they don't have to say, as in the past, they would have had to say, Black people don't have the right to free speech. We can kill Black people and commit genocide. That's okay. They can't say that. Black people, can't say, like in Birmingham, Alabama, where they bombed our churches because we were trying to vote. They can't say you can't vote. What they say is when you do these things, it's not really Black people, it's Russians. So when we attack your house on Redbud in St. Louis, it's not you we're attacking, it's Russia. And if we are in St. Petersburg, Florida, maybe it's the GPS that's wrong, and we might have confused that with St. Petersburg, Russia or something, but it's not you, it's not Black people we're attacking. And this is something that's designed to confuse a lot of people who might otherwise be sympathetic with what they're doing to us by characterizing it as a war against Russia and not the continuous war that Black people have been involved in since we were first kidnapped and brought to this country and our freedom taken away from us. And everything that Black people have been doing since that time is to win our freedom. And it's illegal. And if it's in fact, even if it's not illegal in law, in fact, it's illegal. And people have died trying to do this. And to claim that the Russians told us to vote, there's nobody in America, no group in America that fought and paid the price to vote more than Black people did. Black people did that. We're the ones who were gunned, churches bombed, children killed, leaders assassinated, and things just for trying to vote. And they're going to tell us the Russians are responsible for what it is that we do. And so now what we have is not Birmingham bombing of churches like 1963, it's the bombing of my house in 2022 by the federal government. That's what it is that we're dealing with, having to contend with right now. Yeah.
You know, and I am so sorry for everything that you have had to go through to simply just, you know, create change, movement that's positive, and you know, allow your movement to create what it's about, which means freedom. Now, what I do want to ask you, Reef, I wanted to pull you in because we do have a live audience and they have questions sometimes. Comment. I know you have to go in a minute, but if you can stay for just a minute, just to answer a couple questions. Reef, do you have any questions there or comments that you want to give to Chairman Omali? Reef.
How about I unmute? Would that work? Yeah, if I unmute? Yeah.
Unmute your thing.
So yeah, they just asked what literature and film that Omali would recommend to people to, you know, get caught up. So if you have any recommends.
Well, I would recommend that people go to the Burning Spear, and we have a newspaper, the Burning Spear, and you can go to the website, burningspear.com. And also there are several books, one of which people may be interested in is about the several I've written, you know, all of them have been connected with the political work we do. The most recent one is Vanguard. And, you know, that's the most recent one, but there are others. There is the book Overturning the Culture of Violence that Penny Hest, authored by Penny Hest, that I really think people should look at, and you get a sense of the history that we are dealing with. And also you can go to Uneasy Equilibrium, which is a political report to our 6th Congress, which is really important because here when we talk about uneasy equilibrium, we're talking about this growing contest that's existing between the United States, Russia, China, and all these other forces, and how that relates to the struggle of Black people, you see. So those are a couple of things. And then go to burningspear.com, go to Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Uhuru, UHURU.org. And you can get a lot of more information about our movement, and you can learn more in terms of the kind of information that's accessible to people who are interested in the questions that we're discussing right now in the movement that we're involved in. Learn about the murder of Malcolm X. Learn about how King, you know, they've taken King and sanitized him so that he's this harmless force that just walked around saying, be peaceful and love everybody. He's the one who said the United States is the greatest purveyor of violence on earth. And it was true. And so, I mean, I think that go to handsoffuhuru.org, go to APSP Uhuru.org, and you will get access to a lot of the information that you're interested in. I'm convinced of that.
Yeah. Thank you. And, you know, I wanted to say thank you so much. It was such an honor to have you back on my show. And I always learn so much when I speak with you. And, you know, I'm solidarity with your struggle. You know, call anytime. You have ways to reach me. So please do that. We'll be in communication. So, you know, and we want to see you through this. And I know my audience now is on the edge of their seat and they want to be part of this. So I'm sure that they'll be sending you some emails and contact and support.
Well,
and
so I think that,
do that. Yeah.
Tara, we really appreciate that. And I want to just say that on January 21st, we have one of the mass meetings of the Hands Off Uhuru .org campaign. This is our Fight Back campaign.
Okay.
And we're gonna have with us at that meeting Ward Churchill. I'm not sure you're familiar with Ward Churchill. He's done an incredible amount of work investigating like the FBI and how it has interfered and intervened in our struggles for a long time. He is from the American Indian movement as well. He is a professor, and he's paid a price too for the books that he's written exposing that. And that's one thing you can look for. Google Ward Churchill. And I'm saying this also to the person who raised the question before. And Agents of Repression, I think, is one of the books that he authored. And I think this will be a source of some of the information that the participant asked about earlier on.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for all that information.
Uhuru, freedom. Freedom.
And I want to say to my audience, thank you for joining us tonight. Please follow Kim's show, Kim Iverson. She's live every day at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm one of the producers on the show. You have Johnny Tsunami, who's also a producer, and she is fantastic and very lovely person, and really speaks truth to power, as it were. And I appreciate you, Chairman, and I hope, Chairman Omali, that you all have a podcast someday too. I think that would be great. It'd be great to see you all expand from radio to podcast.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Through this, and we're here for you. And if you want to make something like that happen, I know Indy and Reef would want to talk to you. At
splendid. Splendid, Tara. Yeah.
Cool. So I think it's needed, and you'd reach a lot. You'd reach your international audience, but also, a lot of people maybe that you couldn't otherwise. So we could have a discussion about that if you'd like. And it's very simple, and we have a lot of volunteers and people to help. So
right on.
So have a good night, and we're going to be thinking about you. So audience, we'll see you next week. Thank you everyone who tuned in, and we'll be talking to Johnny Miller from the Donbass region. We'll be live talking about how Ukrainian forces are killing Russian nationalists in the Donbass.
Yeah.
So we'll be talking about that next week.
All right. Thank you so much, Tara. All of your listeners and viewers, thank you. We are winning. Uhuru. Back at you.